The chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent when Tribune Vexer rose from his seat. His purple scales caught the light from the artificial sun that hung above the massive assembly hall. 300 species watched him, their eyes fixed on the tall Xerithian diplomat who commanded attention without speaking a single word. Ambassador Sarah Chun sat in the human delegation section, her hands folded on her lap. She already knew what was coming. The whispers had traveled through every corridor of the station for weeks. The Xerithians wanted humanity gone from the Council. They wanted Earth isolated. They wanted revenge for what happened at the Nexus trade route 6 months ago. Vexer began speaking, his voice carrying across the hall like thunder rolling over mountains. He called humans primitive. He called them dangerous animals who had stumbled into space by accident. He said that their admission to the Council was the greatest mistake in 10,000 years of galactic civilization. Sarah listened to every word. Her face showed nothing. Her heart beat steady in her chest. She had been trained for moments like this. She had been chosen because she could remain calm when others would break. The Tribune continued his speech for nearly an hour. He brought up every conflict humanity had ever been involved in. He twisted facts and presented half-truths as complete pictures. He painted Earth as a world of savages who knew nothing but war and destruction. When he finished, the chamber erupted in noise. Some species applauded. Others shouted in protest. The neutral races simply watched, waiting to see what would happen next. Sarah stood up slowly. The noise died down as all eyes turned to her. She was small compared to most aliens in the room. Her brown hair was tied back in a simple style. Her uniform was plain gray with the Earth insignia on her shoulder. She walked to the speaking platform and looked at Tribune Vexer. He smiled at her, showing rows of sharp teeth. He expected her to beg. He expected her to plead for mercy and understanding. Instead, she thanked him for his speech. She said that humanity had listened carefully to every word. Then she turned and walked out of the chamber without saying anything else. The council members looked at each other in confusion. Some laughed nervously. Tribune Vexer declared victory. He told everyone that the humans had finally learned their place in the galaxy. 3 days passed. The Xerithian fleet gathered at the border of human space. 47 warships of the most advanced design waited for the order to advance. Tribune Vexer had convinced his government that now was the time to strike. Humanity was weak and embarrassed. They would surrender without a fight. Admiral Marcus Reed received the news on the bridge of the ISS Defiance. He was an old man with gray hair and scars on his face from a dozen battles. He had fought pirates, rebels, and hostile aliens throughout his career. He had buried friends and watched ships burn in the darkness of space. He looked at the message from Earth Command and nodded slowly. The order was simple: defend human space. Show no aggression but accept no violation of their borders. The Imperial fleet moved into position. 123 warships formed a wall of steel and fire between the Xerithians and Earth. They were outnumbered but not outmatched. Human ships were built differently than alien vessels. They were ugly and practical. They had no elegant curves or beautiful decorations. They were machines designed for one purpose only: war. Tribune Vexer watched the human fleet from the command center of his flagship. He laughed when he saw them. The ships looked like boxes with engines attached. They had no grace, no sophistication. He ordered his fleet to advance. The Xerithian ships crossed the border at exactly 0600 hours galactic time. They formed an arrow formation, their weapons charging with energy that could melt planets. Their shields glowed blue against the blackness of space. Admiral Reed watched them come. He gave no order to retreat. He gave no order to fire. He simply waited. When the Xerithian fleet came within weapons range, something strange happened. The human ships began to move. They shifted positions in ways that seemed random at first. Then the pattern became clear. The human fleet had formed a sphere around the Xerithian arrow. Every single enemy ship was now surrounded on all sides. There was no escape route. There was no way to retreat. Tribune Vexer screamed at his commanders to break free. His ships tried to push through, but the human vessels moved like a single organism. Every gap closed before it could be exploited. Every escape route vanished before ships could reach it. Admiral Reed opened a communication channel. His face appeared on every screen in both fleets. He spoke calmly, almost gently. He told Tribune Vexer that humanity had listened to his speech. They had heard every insult and every lie. They had felt every piece of hatred in his words. And now they were responding. But they were not responding with words. The human fleet activated weapons that the Zerithians had never seen before. Plasma cannons that could cut through shields like paper. Missile systems that launched thousands of warheads in seconds. Railguns that fired metal slugs at nearly the speed of light. Admiral Reed did not fire a single shot. He simply let the Zerithians see what they faced. He let them understand that their entire fleet could be destroyed in minutes. He let them feel the fear that they had tried to make humanity feel. Tribune Vexer demanded to know why the humans were doing this. He called it an act of war. He threatened to bring the entire Galactic Council against Earth. Admiral Reed smiled for the first time. He reminded Vexer that the Zerithians had crossed into human space. They had violated the border with a military fleet. Under galactic law, humanity had every right to destroy them completely. But they would not do that. Instead, Admiral Reed offered a choice. The Zerithian fleet could surrender their weapons and leave human space in peace. Or they could stay and discover exactly what human warships were capable of. Vexer tried to call for help. His communications were jammed. He tried to organize a coordinated attack. His commanders were too afraid to move. The human ships had their weapons locked onto every single Zerithian vessel. One wrong move, and the entire fleet would cease to exist. For 6 hours, nobody moved. The two fleets hung in space like frozen statues. Tribune Vexer paced his command center, searching for some way out of the trap. His officers whispered among themselves. Fear spread through the Zerithian ships like a disease. Finally, Vexer made his decision. He could not sacrifice his entire fleet for pride. He gave the order to power down weapons and withdraw. Admiral Reed watched the Zerithian ships retreat. He did not celebrate. He did not gloat. He simply nodded and ordered his fleet to stand down. The news spread across the galaxy within hours. The Zerithians had been humiliated without a single shot being fired. Tribune Vexer had led his people into a trap that a human commander had prepared 3 days earlier. Sarah Chun returned to the Galactic Council chamber 1 week later. This time, she requested permission to speak. The council granted it immediately. She stood at the same platform where Vexer had delivered his hateful speech. She looked out at the same 300 species who had listened to him call humanity primitive and dangerous. Her speech was short. She said that humanity did not want war with anyone. They did not seek conflict or conquest. They simply wanted to live in peace among the stars. But she also said that humanity would never accept being treated as lesser beings. They would never bow to threats or surrender to fear. They had come from a world where survival required strength and courage. Those qualities had not disappeared when they reached space. She told the council that the Tribune had spoken against humanity with words of hatred. The Imperial fleet had spoken louder with actions of restraint. Any species that could have destroyed an enemy fleet but chose mercy instead deserved respect, not contempt. When she finished, the chamber was silent. Then, slowly, species began to stand. Some who had applauded Vexer now applauded Sarah. Others who had remained neutral now showed support for humanity. Tribune Vexer was not present. He had been recalled to his homeworld in disgrace. His political career was finished. His dream of driving humanity from the galactic community had died in the cold darkness between stars. Admiral Reed returned to Earth as a hero. Parades filled the streets of every major city. Children waved flags and shouted his name. But he did not smile during any of the celebrations. When reporters asked him why, he gave a simple answer. He said that war was never something to celebrate. Victory was never something to enjoy. He had done his duty and protected his people. That was enough. The months that followed brought change to the galaxy. Other species began reaching out to humanity. Trade agreements were signed. Cultural exchanges began. Scientists from different worlds started working together on projects that would benefit everyone. The Zarathian Empire became isolated. Other species no longer trusted them. Their economy suffered as trade routes closed. Tribune Vexer's speech had been meant to destroy humanity, but it had destroyed his own people instead. Sarah Chun was promoted to lead the entire human diplomatic corps. She worked tirelessly to build bridges between Earth and other worlds. She never forgot the hatred in Vexer's voice, but she refused to let it define how she treated others. Admiral Reed retired to a small house by the sea on Earth. He spent his days fishing and watching the waves. Sometimes, young officers visited him to ask for advice. He always told them the same thing. True strength was not about destroying enemies. It was about having the power to destroy them and choosing not to. That was what made humanity different. That was what would secure their place among the stars. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Words could spread hatred and fear. Words could turn allies into enemies and friends into strangers. But words alone could not win wars or change the course of history. Action spoke louder. And when the Tribune had spoken against humanity, the Imperial fleet had given the only response that mattered. They had shown restraint when they could have shown rage. They had offered mercy when they could have delivered death. That was the human way. That was why they had survived every challenge their universe had thrown at them. That was why they would continue to survive long after empires rose and fell around them. The stars belonged to those who earned them. And humanity had earned their place not through conquest or cruelty, but through something far more powerful. They had earned it through being exactly what Tribune Vexer had accused them of being. They were survivors. They were fighters. They were dangerous when threatened. But they were also something he had never understood. They were merciful, and that mercy had spoken louder than any weapon ever could.